I wanted to get on first and thank you for all of the incredible positive feedback I have gotten from the talk or the interview that I gave in the Kick Sugar Summit on October 4th. Finding Common Ground Between Food Addiction and Eating Disorders was the title of that talk. And from the many, many of you that I heard from, this talk really resonated for you and helped you come to a greater and deeper understanding of your struggles with food, how they can be categorized, and what you can do about them. I do believe that the Kick Sugar Summit allows you to purchase interviews if you missed it live, and sometimes they do free replays as well. So definitely check that out if you missed that, because I really did break down all of the particulars of this topic and really do hope it serves you. One of the reasons why I wanted to get on here to talk about this today is because, unfortunately, in the eating disorders treatment community, many eating disorder treatment providers are unwilling to look for common ground between the treatment of eating disorders and food addiction, and still fail to recognize that food addiction exists, that it is real, or that it is even a possibility. And I have become more and more outspoken over the years because I feel like this refusal to acknowledge a brain-based condition actually gaslights patients, people who are suffering, tells them that their experience is not real, that they're just not trying hard enough, that their mindset just needs to be changed and everything will be okay. And that is not the truth. And what I find equally disturbing and very concerning in terms of the future of how this conversation moves forward is that many people in my field are unwilling to even have conversations about the topic. And I feel like there is censorship of voices like mine that is going on. And I don't use that word lightly. I've had to end my relationship with a very prestigious medical institution that I have been affiliated with for more than 2 decades over this very topic. And I think that that is devastating for patient care. It is devastating for science, and it is devastating for providing people the relief that they need in dealing with life-threatening conditions. So I refuse to be censored. I'm going to continue to speak out. And finally, as I've said before, and I will say again here, I believe that the nature of this conversation and the significance of this conversation in terms of eating disorder and food addiction treatment and recovery is equivalent to the kind of conversation of, is the world flat or is the world round, right? People were told that they were crazy for suggesting that the world could be round until everyone agreed that the world was round. Just like patients are being gaslit, told that they can't possibly have an addiction to certain highly processed foods that include large amounts of refined processed sugars and flours. Yet one day, hopefully, it will be recognized. And that day needs to come soon, so that people can get the relief, the support, and the healing that they need and deserve. And one last question/challenge that I would like to pose is, I guess it's to my colleagues more than anyone else, my colleagues in the eating disorder space. If you are so confident in your stance, why won't you engage in informed, respectful, science-based conversation on the topic rather than trying to censor voices that are not in line with your views, which are largely political versus science-based? Why do you try to shut down those voices rather than have a conversation respectfully and try to come to some sort of way to navigate this very important and nuanced area of treatment and recovery? Why do we need to shut down and censor voices versus move forward together? if you are unclear about what I'm talking about in terms of understanding what is food addiction, what is an eating disorder, where is there overlap between the two, and how are they different, I've done a deep dive into this in many different places, most recently in this year's Kick Sugar Summit. But what I would like to say is this, I feel like it's splitting of hairs to put food addiction into a different category than all other addictions. For example, you would not ask someone who is clean from a cocaine addiction to go have one line of cocaine and expect them to be okay. Why would you expect a food addict to do similar? And I want you to remember that the US government put into account parity laws in the past years, equating coverage for physical health and mental health and giving the same coverage. So by law, mental health conditions need to be covered to the same extent that other parts of a person's body are treated and covered by insurance companies. And I need you to think about food addiction and other forms of addiction along these lines. Why would we recognize some forms of addiction and not others when the behaviors and the results are the same? In fact, imaging studies of food addiction, people who suffer from food addiction, show exaggerated responses in the brain to addictive foods that are even greater than people who are addicted to heroin and cocaine. So refusing to acknowledge food addiction would be like not covering mental health conditions, but covering conditions that are deemed to be physical only. Think about that.